The shadow of a slave, the soul of a king. Reverent. O mankind, indeed, we have created you from male and female, and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Solemn. Surah Al-Hujurat, chapter 49, verse 13. Thoughtful. Have you ever wondered what true freedom is? Is it the absence of physical chains, or the liberation of the soul from the prisons of fear and falsehood? Pensive. What is the real measure of a man's worth? The purity of his bloodline, the weight of his purse, or the unshakable conviction of his heart? Short pause. And what happens when the most powerless man in a society built on brutal hierarchy discovers a truth so profound it makes him more powerful than the masters who own his very body? Narrating. Our story begins in the early 7th century in the harsh, sun-bleached valley of Mecca. This was a city of jarring contrasts. By day, the air was thick with the smell of dust, spices, and melting animal fat. The sounds, a chaotic symphony of merchants haggling, camels groaning, and poets boasting of their tribe's glory. By night, under a canopy of brilliant stars, the city would prostrate before 360 idols of wood and stone, each a silent, lifeless god for every day of the year. Somber. This was a culture intoxicated with pride. A man's honor was his lineage, his tribe was his fortress, and his wealth was his god. Power was absolute, held in the hands of the Quraysh, the masters of the city. Grave. In this world of rigid, arrogant hierarchy, there existed a class of people who were not considered people at all. They were property. Solemn. And among them was a man named Bilal ibn Rabah. He was a slave of Abyssinian Ethiopian descent, his skin dark, his frame tall and strong. He possessed no tribe to defend him, no lineage to boast of, no wealth to his name. He was owned by one of the most powerful and cruel chieftains of the Quraysh, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, a man whose heart was as hard as the desert rock. Bilal's life was one of silent servitude, his days measured by the orders of his master, his value determined only by his physical strength and his unwavering obedience. He was, in the eyes of Meccan society, a voiceless shadow. But amidst the splendor and arrogance of the Quraysh, an unseen shift was occurring. A new sound had begun to echo softly through the narrow, dusty alleyways of the city. It was the sound of recitation, of words so beautiful and so powerful, they seemed to challenge the very silence of the heavens. They were the words of the Quran, being spoken by a man known for his impeccable character, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace and blessings be upon him. This new message spoke not of tribal glory, but of human brotherhood. It spoke not of many gods, but of one God. It spoke of a new kind of nobility, one measured not by blood, but by righteousness. This was a message that was a direct threat to the entire power structure of Mecca. It was a message of spiritual liberation in a society built on physical and mental enslavement. And soon, the ears of the voiceless slave would hear these words, and in the depths of his soul, a king would awaken. The whisper that became a roar. The arrival of the divine sign for Bilal was not a parting of the seas or a miracle in the sky. It was a whisper, a quiet verse, perhaps overheard as his master Umayyah and his friends debated the new madness that had afflicted Muhammad, or perhaps heard directly from the lips of the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in a secret gathering. The message was simple. Yet it was the most revolutionary idea to ever enter Mecca. It was the message of pure, unadulterated monotheism, Tawheed, the truth that Bilal's soul had been yearning for, without even knowing it. Say, He is Allah, who is one. Allah, the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is born, nor is there to Him any equivalent. Surah Al-Ikhlas, chapter 112, 1-4. That one word, one, struck Bilal's heart like a bolt of lightning. In a world of 360 competing gods, of tribal loyalties and complex hierarchies, the idea of a single, universal, compassionate creator was not just a theological concept, it was a declaration of freedom. If there was only one God and all of humanity were His servants, then His master Umayyah was no greater than him in the sight of that God. His enslavement on earth was temporary and meaningless compared to the eternal dignity he had just been offered. In the secrecy of his heart, Bilal accepted Islam. The emptiness of his life was filled with a newfound purpose. The idols his master so proudly worshipped now seemed pathetic and absurd. For the first time, he felt a sense of honor that had nothing to do with his station in life. He was a servant, yes, but now he was a servant of the Lord of the worlds. It was a secret too powerful to remain hidden for long. His faith was discovered. When his master Umayyah ibn Khalaf found out, his reaction was one of pure, unrestrained fury. This was not merely the disobedience of a slave. This was a fundamental rebellion against his entire world. A slave, his property, claiming a direct personal relationship with a god who did not belong to the Quraysh, was an intolerable act of treason. The torture began immediately. Umayyah, along with the other chieftains, took it upon himself to make an example of the weak and unprotected new Muslims. As scholars of tafsir explain, the persecution of enslaved converts like Bilal, Ammar ibn Yasir, and others was especially savage because they had no tribe to defend them. Their bodies were seen as the property of their masters, to be beaten, starved, and broken back into submission. Umayyah would drag Bilal out into the searing heat of the Meccan day, stripping him of his clothes and flogging him mercilessly. He would leave him in the desert without food or water, all while demanding one simple thing: renounce this God of Muhammad. Say that Lat and Uzza are your lords. But the faith that had taken root in Bilal's heart was not something that could be whipped out of him. With every lash, his conviction grew stronger. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, who himself endured immense psychological and physical hardship, gave context to this era of trial when he said, "No one was harmed for the sake of Allah as I was harmed," acknowledging the terrible suffering his followers endured for their belief. Bilal was at the very forefront of that suffering. The initial tortures failed. The beatings did not break his spirit. The starvation did not weaken his resolve. With every demand to praise the idols, Bilal would only repeat the name of his new Lord. Enraged by this unbreakable spirit, Umayyah decided to escalate the punishment to a new level of cruelty. He would not just break Bilal's body. He would make a public spectacle of his faith, crushing it under the weight of the desert itself. And then came the final unmistakable sign of a soul that could not be conquered: the rock, the ransom, and the roar of one. The final warning was not from God. It was a screaming threat from a tyrant. You will renounce this madness, Umayyah ibn Khalaf roared, or you will die in this desert. A lesson to every slave who dares to dream. This was to be the ultimate punishment, a public spectacle of power designed to terrorize the small, nascent Muslim community. At high noon, when the desert sun was a merciless hammer in the sky, they dragged Bilal to a flat, open area where the sand was as hot as burning coals. They stripped him of his clothes and threw him onto his back. The scorching ground seared his flesh, but this was only the beginning. Umayyah ordered his men to bring a massive boulder, a rock so heavy it took several men to lift. With a great grunting effort, they heaved it onto Bilal's chest. The weight was immense, crushing him, forcing the air from his lungs. Every breath was a struggle against the suffocating pressure. The pain was unimaginable, the burning of the sand below, the crushing weight of the rock above, and the blistering heat of the sun bearing down on him. Umayyah stood over him, a whip in his hand, his face contorted with rage.
"Will you not stop?"
he shrieked.
"Curse Muhammad, praise Lat and Uzza, save..."
From beneath the rock, through cracked, bleeding lips, with a voice choked by dust and pain, Bilal responded. He did not have the strength to debate or to argue. He had the strength for only one word, a word that was his shield, his creed, his defiance, and his victory. Weakly, painfully. Ahadun Ahad. One. With every lash of the whip, with every demand to recant, his reply was the same, defiant, strained. Ahadun Ahad. This single word drove his torturers into a frenzy. It was a more powerful act of rebellion than any curse or insult. Every utterance of one was a complete annihilation of their 360 gods. It was a declaration that their power, their tribe, their wealth, and their idols were all nothing. In that moment, the tortured slave on the ground was freer and more powerful than the masters who stood over him. This scene of horrific torture repeated day after day. But one day, as the torture was underway, a man of quiet dignity and immense status walked by. It was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the closest companion of the Prophet Muhammad. His heart broke at the sight of Bilal's suffering. He did not engage the torturers with force. He engaged them with a logic they understood, commerce. He turned to the furious Umayyah and calmly, thoughtfully said, "Do you not fear God, that you treat this man this way?" Umayyah, arrogant, challenging, replied, "You are the one who corrupted him, so you save him from his plight." Abu Bakr saw his opening. Resolute, "I will," he said. He offered to buy Bilal. Umayyah, seeing a chance to rid himself of a rebellious slave and make a profit, agreed. He sold Bilal to Abu Bakr, who immediately took the rock off his chest and declared him a free man. This act of ransom is a perfect illustration of a principle found throughout the Quran, such as in Surah Al-Layl, which speaks of two types of people. As for he who gives and fears Allah and believes in the best reward, we will ease him toward ease. But as for he who is stingy and considers himself free of need and denies the best reward, we will ease him toward hardship. Surah Al-Layl 92, 5-10. Abu Bakr, who gave of his wealth to free a believer for the sake of God, was eased towards ease. Humayya, who sold a human soul, was eased towards his own destruction. And so ended the physical torture of Bilal ibn Rabah. A body was ransomed, but a soul had already been freed. The man who was once voiceless property had, with a single word, shaken the foundations of Mecca. And that word, that powerful, defiant voice, was destined to echo from the most sacred rooftop on earth. The call from the rooftop. The freeing of Bilal was not just an act of charity. It was a strategic victory for the nascent Muslim community. His story became a legend, a testament to the transformative power of faith. The man who endured the unendurable became a symbol of hope for the oppressed and a source of immense pride for the believers. His journey from the crushing rock of Mecca to a position of unparalleled honor is one of the most powerful proofs that in Islam, nobility is determined by piety, taqwa, not by race, lineage, or social status. When the persecution in Mecca became unbearable, Bilal migrated to the new city-state of Medina along with the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and the other believers. In Medina, a new community was being forged, a society built on the principles of brotherhood and submission to God. As the first mosque was built, a practical question arose. How should the believers be called to prayer? Some suggested a bell, like the Christians. Others suggested a horn, like the Jews. But the Prophet was not satisfied with imitating others. The solution came through a divine gift, a dream. A companion of the Prophet, Abdullah ibn Zayd, saw a dream in which an angel taught him the beautiful, powerful words of the Adhan, the Islamic call to prayer. He rushed to the Prophet.
"Oh, Bilal, get up and call the people to prayer."
He chose Bilal, the freed Abyssinian slave, to be the first Muezzin of Islam. As narrated in the books of Hadith, like Sunan Abi Dawood, the Prophet chose him specifically for the beauty and power of his voice. The same voice that had angered the idolaters with its declaration of monotheism would now be the official voice that called the city of the Prophet to worship that one God 5 times a day. Years passed. The Muslim community grew in strength and number. The story then culminates in one of the most awe-inspiring moments in history, the peaceful conquest of Mecca. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, returned to the city that had cast him out, not as a vengeful conqueror, but as a merciful leader. His first act was to destroy the 360 idols that had polluted the sacred Kaaba, cleansing the house of God and restoring it to the pure worship of Ibrahim. His second act was a powerful, revolutionary statement that turned the entire social order of Arabia on its head. He looked around at his companions, at the noblemen of Quraysh who had accepted Islam, at the warriors of Medina, at the freed slaves who were now his brothers. Then he commanded Bilal ibn Rabah to do something unimaginable. He ordered him to climb onto the roof of the holy Kaaba itself, the most sacred spot on earth. Imagine the scene. The proud, arrogant chieftains of Quraysh, the same men who had overseen Bilal's torture in the dirt, now stood silently in the courtyard below. They were forced to crane their necks and look up at the very man they had once considered less than human, standing on the rooftop of their most sacred structure. And then Bilal raised his hands, took a deep breath, and his powerful voice rang out over the silent city, proclaiming the words that were the ultimate victory over the age of ignorance. Allah. It was the ultimate symbol that the old world was gone. The new world, a world where the most noble is the most righteous, had finally dawned. The footsteps in paradise. The story of Bilal ibn Rabah is not just a tale of endurance. It is a timeless lesson on the true meaning of honor, the poison of racism, and the mercy of a Lord who raises the oppressed and humbles the arrogant. His legacy is a cornerstone of the Islamic promise that every soul has equal worth in the eyes of God. Why is his story so central to the Muslim consciousness? Because it is a living, breathing refutation of the ignorant standards by which the world so often measures a person. In our modern times, where people are still judged by the color of their skin, their nationality, their wealth, or their social class, Bilal's story is a powerful, revolutionary manifesto. It teaches us that these metrics are worthless. The only thing that grants a person true honor is their relationship with their Creator. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, himself cemented Bilal's extraordinary status for all time. He did not just love Bilal as a companion. He saw in him a spiritual rank that transcended his earthly station. In a moment of profound spiritual intimacy, the Prophet shared an experience he had during his ascension to the heavens. He turned to Bilal one morning after the dawn prayer and said, "O Bilal, tell me of the best deed you did in Islam, for I heard the sound of your footsteps in front of me in paradise." Bilal, ever humble, replied that he had not done anything extraordinary, except that whenever he performed ablution, wudu, day or night, he would pray whatever was destined for him to pray. Sahih al-Bukhari, 1149. Reflect on this. The Prophet of God, the greatest of all creation, heard the footsteps of this freed Abyssinian slave ahead of him in paradise. This was the divine honor. The mercy of Allah is a theme that courses through Bilal's entire life. He was saved from physical torment by the mercy of God working through Abu Bakr. He was elevated from the status of a voiceless slave to the honored position of the Prophet's personal Muezzin. And he was granted a rank in paradise so high that his footsteps preceded the Prophet's. His life is a perfect illustration of the Quranic promise, and we wanted to confer favor upon those who were oppressed in the land, and make them leaders and make them inheritors. To protect ourselves from the arrogance of the Quraysh and to walk the path of Bilal, we must embrace these core principles. Judge by piety, not appearance. We must actively fight the diseases of racism and classism in our hearts and our communities, remembering that the only thing that makes one person better than another is their God consciousness. Value sincerity over spectacle. Bilal's most hopeful deed was a quiet, consistent one, praying after every ablution. This teaches us that the small, sincere acts of worship done away from the eyes of people can be the heaviest on our scales. Endure hardship with beautiful patience. When faced with our own trials, be they social, financial, or personal, we must remember Bilal under the rock. His defiance was not in fighting back physically, but in holding fast to his core belief. Patience and trust in Allah are the believer's ultimate weapons. So where do you stand in the story of mankind? Do you find yourself among those who place value on the superficial, on status, wealth, and lineage, or do you strive to be like Bilal, whose heart was so pure that his footsteps echoed in paradise, even while his body still walked the earth.